All right, so overall, right, I just wanted to show what kind of the three views of Salesforce Customer 360, and that's their branding. So I think that the reason a lot of people get confused around Salesforce, and as you put it, a behemoth, which I think is a good name for it, and many of the points that you brought up, I agree with wholeheartedly. I look at it from a platform perspective, which is where my favoritism comes for it. And they've grown very rapidly through both organically and through acquisition. And that branding that they've had to do to keep up with that has really made a lot of confusion. So I do think that what they're using the last couple of years with the Salesforce Customer 360 makes sense, because they've been acquiring and building out pieces that will address customers from every perspective. And when you talk to the salespeople, I'm sure that's part of the turnoff with them, is that they see this as, what you really should need and should have. And I think there are a few organizations where that's true. I think there's a few other organizations that could do it, but would really struggle to get there. And for most of them, that's really not the case. They're going to be using pieces of this. And then, you mentioned that, if I can get this to go to the next page. Okay. There we go. You were talking about, so, TIC just did their implementation, and it's Service Cloud. I noticed in your email thread with Travis that you shared with us that, no Sales Cloud, just Service Cloud. And, while that is, an aspect that comes about, one from, I think, just miscommunication, the way that they sell the licensing. There's Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, et cetera. And also, the silos that you mentioned. And so part of those silos, just like you have between your different departments, is there's that huge silo between different focuses, right? So you've got the sales group and they're doing their thing, and you've got marketing and they're doing their thing. And, while Salesforce wants to tie them all together, there are some shared pieces. And if it were just Service Cloud, I think that it would be, mostly kind of a disservice to both the license itself, right? Because you're paying for top tier, and if all it did was a one-trick pony, it wouldn't be all that great.
Yeah.
So really, what we shoot for is a balanced viewpoint. So I highlighted, what they're calling Customer 360. The white ones, which is the service and platform. I mean, that's what you're already getting initially if you're only going with service, right? So I'll explain a little bit on the next slide, but platform is common to several of these products, and then some of them are completely separate because of acquisition and functionality. So I have a few here that are in red. I mean, so success, as you mentioned, so Salesforce is very expensive with their consulting. Success isn't even a product, it is their consulting offering, which is why most people go with partners. The safety and industries, I don't think they apply at all to what you're looking at. Safety was really about the whole COVID and managing that. Industries are some prepackaged, base templates that are focused at specific industries, and UL is an industry unto itself. I mean, it has some commonalities with others, but it's a very unique beast, as you will. Marketing and commerce, they may come into play, but I don't think that they would be part of your initial. They're going to be down the road. Although I do want to get back to that eventually, and maybe not even in this meeting, because what you were talking about with the self-service could fit in very nice with the commerce pieces. And then the gray areas that we have here are things that we will discover working, with you and your teams on where they fit in, right? I mean, is sustainability important, which is really just metrics and monitoring to see if some of your practices are, an E practice, green practices might not apply. Whether you have partnerships that are involved, and that could be on the sales side, the service side, and they even lump in, us as partners. The integration with MuleSoft, which was a great acquisition. We can dive into that later on too. And then the analytics piece. A lot of folks have analytics systems that they're already used to, and Salesforce is very well set up in order to export, integrate with those, or you can build it all inside of Salesforce. And currently they have multiple different facets of that. And then the Einstein, which you mentioned, which you mentioned that you had done it a few years ago. That's a product that has just been maturing I think that the marketing and the product itself are very out of sync. That said, though, it's actually a solid project if it's used the way it's supposed to be used. And I've got a bit of a prejudice on that because from back in my BA days, Skip Sauls was a design architect and product manager with my key product, and he wound up being part of the Einstein team. So there are pieces in there that are really awesome, and then there are lots of pieces that are not as much. And trying to oversell them is where the mistakes come in, right? One other piece, so I did skim over, that how the platform piece works, and so I just kind of wanted to bring up this slide here, which I actually put together for you, but I've been thinking about it this way in a while. Is that, so when you think of Service Cloud, right? So Service Cloud, if you go to their site, you see this is, this offering, Service Cloud, and here's Sales Cloud, and here's a couple other ones, which, we won't dive into here because they don't apply. They're not separate entities. They're not separate platforms or even separate organizations, depending on how they're set up and configured. They're collections of licenses. So it's really the platform itself is the CRM platform. Right, it started with Sales Cloud, then they added Service Cloud, which is why people still think of them as separate. But what you have here is you got a common platform that has standard objects, which is their name for tables, users, accounts, contacts, products. There's others as well, and then standard features, right? So authentication, flows, which is they're making a lot of changes, so it's kind of a good time for you. They've taken several other products. They did various types of automation, and they're merging them all into one specific API and platform, which is called Flows, as they've built that up. And then, notifications, approvals, and again, many other features that are shared. So that's where the platform itself is. And then when you have the licenses, so Service Cloud, you have next actions, which tells the rep what they should be doing next, email to case, and there's also phone to case and web to case. So, people can open up their own case automatically, and then it goes into a queue. You can create service teams. You have a service path, which is the process of a service process, and so that you can see at any point where you are in that journey. And then on the Sales Cloud, you've got very similar but different ones because they're only for sales purpose, right? Campaigns, quotes to contracts, splitting deals. The sales path is really an equivalent, but it's that implementation. And then they can both have aspects of Experience Cloud, which is the external facing website that you can create that is attached to your Service Cloud sales, your org itself, right? Whether it's a Service Cloud or a Sales Cloud. And the Experience Cloud allows your either partners or customers or both to interact with your system with specific permissions so that they can manage their cases, see what's happening there. They can have collaboration and share with other users. There's a lot of case deflection there where they talk to a chatbot, and essentially what it will do is it'll find the answer for them and bring them to documentation. Again, that's a deep subject we can get into depending upon interest levels. And then, the basis is that these sit on top of the Salesforce platform. So if you have a given org, an org is a collection of licenses. And so it not necessarily is only going to be Service Cloud or only going to be Sales Cloud. It can actually be both. And then how that's distinguished is based upon the license that you assign to an individual user when you set them up. So essentially you have the platform, which is called an org, and then that will have features that are enabled based upon your contract with Salesforce. And then individually, users are given a specific license that is related to their interactions with the system, and that is the functionality, the features, and the data access and views that they are assigned. So that's where a lot of people get confused because they think of them as separate products. But there are some, because of that confusion, where when you talk about an org, so you mentioned Tech has their instance set up. So if there are overlaps, a lot of overlaps, or a good sized amount of overlaps between Tech and your group, it might not be a good idea to have it be a separate org. It would be better to have it in the same org, but you use different record types and different profiles in order to segregate that so that you're sharing data. And especially so with Sales Cloud and in any of those circumstances. Because to me, one of the great things, before I was in IT, I was in sales and marketing. And one of the things that I love about Service Cloud is that it has that upsell built into it, right? So the whole next actions piece, besides, the next action in order to make sure that they're getting the appropriate service, but also helps them identify what is the most likely upsell for them, and to either, manage that upsell or turn it into something that gets passed off to a salesperson, again, depending on your processes.
Got it.
So that's it kind of in a nutshell. And I don't know why it acts like that.
One thing, sorry, Scott. Yeah, one thing
Sure.
that is super important with Salesforce is, as we saw on the last slide, the big benefit is that you can very easily move from one circle to another. So having those objects in common can very much accelerate the omnichannel experience for your customers, because you can have a CSR logging, an interaction on the call center, and at the same time, the sales team logging an interaction with the same client or same account. And once you have those two buckets, and you also put that to the public with the Experience Cloud, with the portal, that's where you get a lot from that platform. So the fact that you can aggregate several solutions together with some native integration, especially for these three that we have here, is really one of the strengths of the platform.
Got it.
And to add to that, one of the commonalities that I didn't mention is that underlying in the platform itself are standards-based REST APIs. So all of these integrate very easily with other systems, beyond the ones that Salesforce will sell you.
Got it.
Does it clarify a little bit, or is it something that you already saw in your previous interaction?
I guess I didn't have an idea about if they were different products or all part of the same, but it's very helpful. Especially just seeing some of the nomenclature. You're talking about objects and stuff. I've seen that in some of the documentation. Now you're putting like pieces together for me, so this is good.
Yeah, objects are essentially a table in the database.
Yeah. Cool.
Excellent. And then, one piece that we have here is about adoption. So I'm going to let Alexis speak to most of this, and I might have some comments on top of that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott.